that if we're really going to take these vehicles beyond curiosities, beyond a few hundred here and a few hundred there, we're really going to have to get the grid ready. And so let me just ask some questions. Will the grid be ready? What if we had demand from 10 million vehicles, 50 million vehicles? Is the grid going to be ready? There's a lot of reason to think that it can be, but it's not something that's going to happen without a great deal of thought and effort. There are many ways that these plugins can improve the grid, from smart charging to vehicle to grid, stimulating on-site generation. You may decide you want to put solar panels on your roof and plug your car into those at your home. We could see that happening. And then just smarter homes and offices. Your car talking to your smart home, talking to the grid, talking to the solar panels on the roof, talking to your smart refrigerator. All of these linked with information technology that will make this system more efficient, that will allow it to be, these vehicles to get to massive scale without putting undue strain on the grid. So Southern California Edison, for example, did a study which showed that if you charged most of these vehicles, 4 million vehicles, and you did that mostly at night, there is in fact sufficient capacity in the Southern California grid if you charge at night. Now, if you don't charge at night, there could be a very different story, and that's part of the challenge that we've got to get at. Tesla, the plug-in sports car company, and PG&E did an interesting experiment. One of the interesting parts of being here in California is that wind energy tends to blow more at night than during the day, but of course, you really need the electricity during the day more than you need it at night. But what if you had hundreds of thousands of plug-in vehicles able to charge from this wind energy at night? Interesting way to take this less valuable electricity that is a result of wind energy at night, charge up these batteries, use it the next day either in the vehicle or in some cases potentially even sell it back to the grid. The other thing we found is that actually these vehicles developed in the right way can actually follow the up and down of the output of a wind generating facility, and that's what this is showing. A smart battery and a smart car following the ups and downs of a wind plant over on the other side of the state. And one of the members of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission did an interesting study. He asked himself, well, could you actually make money with a plug-in hybrid if you could sell this electricity back? And the answer is you might be able to actually make money. And that's the green line. The cost of these vehicles actually in aggregate going down over time because you're selling electricity back. I want to emphasize this is not around the corner, that ability. But it's also not decades away, the ability to sell electricity back. So this is a very exciting opportunity as well. The last thing I want to say is that it's very exciting to see the extent to which the car companies and the electric utilities are now talking to each other. The car companies are obviously very used to talking to the oil companies. They're less used to talking to the electric utilities. So Southern California Edison and Ford announced a partnership several months ago. Today, we heard from General Motors, a major partnership with utilities all over the country, asking these very same questions. How do we make sure the grid is ready for more than a handful of these vehicles so they're more than just a little oddity in the market, but actually fundamentally change the makeup of our fleet? Lastly, and then I will shut up, you can be part of the solution. Drive a plug-in vehicle, make your home energy efficient, buy renewable electricity, invest in green companies. All these things are things we can take into our own hands as consumers, as voters, as citizens. And I think what's so exciting about plug-in vehicles, plugging into a greener grid, is that it's all going to be something that's going to be so meaningful to all of us in so many different ways, dealing with the climate crisis, dealing with our energy security problems, reviving our economy. So with that, I thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you tonight.
Thank you, Dan. We'll have a chance for asking questions of all three speakers at the end, so that way we keep you here the whole time. Okay, first I want to ask a couple of, I'm a research anthropologist, so I'm always interested in what people's lifestyles. And I'm curious how many people have already installed photovoltaics on the roof? There's a- All right, well, that's good news. So I'm curious, you know, how people will want it, with this thing of connecting the car to the photovoltaics is just, I think it's something that holds some great promise in the future. Our next speaker is Mark Duvall. Mark's, first of all, I should say he's a co-organizer with myself. We've worked a lot on this conference, and so he might be a little bit tired like I am, and so if he falls asleep at the podium, I'll try to poke him and keep him awake. But Mark is the, I got to put my glasses on here to read make sure I get his title right. Mark is the manager of technology development for the electric transportation area. He's been involved in plug-in hybrids now for how many years? 16 years, and he started at UC Davis, where I am. So, yeah. Mark Duvall.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So Dan stole the first part of my talk, and Tom asked my questions. So I'm left with how many people own or have ever owned or driven or stolen and retained for a while an electric vehicle? Okay, keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Okay, and a hybrid vehicle. If you have both, you can just raise both hands. Okay, we are preaching to the converted. Well, the good news is that a lot more of you are going to have a chance to raise your hand in the next several years. Today, maybe the unfortunate part of this equation is today if you go down to the car dealership and you buy a mid-size car, any one of them, Toyota Camry, Ford Fusion, anything. At today's prices, you're going to pay as much in gasoline to drive the car over most of its useful lifetime as you'll pay for the car to begin with. So when you go down and look at buying a car, you're going to think, wow, I'm going to spend $25,000 in gasoline for this car over its lifetime. So this is where we're at. So there's no question that we won't have lots of alternatives to this, and everything plays a role. We will hopefully have great companies making environmentally sustainable biofuels. We will have hopefully clean electricity and lots of different vehicles to plug it in, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And if anyone out there can think of anything else, well, we need to try it, because the idea is that at these gas prices and with the climate problem and with the energy security problem that we have in this country, it's not something that we can ignore, and it's not something that Americans can ignore. And in general, when we think about solving the problem, we think about solving the whole problem. I mean, I know a lot of people that say, well, gas is high, I'm going to ride my bike to work. This is not really how we're wired to think in this country. We think gas is high, there's too much CO2, we need to solve that. All of it, every last bit of it. We need to just take care of this problem once and for all. So I started in 1992. I was lucky enough to be a student at UC Davis, and we had a really nice experimental vehicle program. And we made these little sort of cigar-shaped cars that we would drive around a track. And some of these little cars, they weighed less than the driver, and they used a little one-cylinder Briggs & Stratton engine that had all these modifications to it. And sometimes you could get 2,000 or 3,000 miles per gallon. That were the possibilities. Now, you were wedged into this thing, and I got to drive in one of our big competitions where we set this record when I was a senior in college. But the only reason I got picked is because I knew the most about how to drive it, but I had had the stomach flu for 2 weeks before, so I had lost like 10 pounds. So I was under the minimum weight, and I could squeeze into the car, and they thought, well, maybe he's well enough that probably he won't pass out while he's driving it. So we went from that and said, if we could make something just a little more practical, I think we'd be onto something. And we didn't know what that meant, but lots of cool things were happening. General Motors built the Sun Racer. They had the first Australian Solar Challenge, and some of these cars drove across Australia at 40 or 50 miles an hour using only solar energy. And I thought, wow, that's really great. And then, but still not that practical either. And actually, one of the drivers, Alec Brooks, is in the room today from Google, and you should all get his autograph, because that was one of the great achievements of that era.